Hi, Dave, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. There's no picture up yet, so that's all right.
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah, fine.
Give it a minute. Okay, is everyone there? Let's do a roll call. Rita, Mary, Ruth is there, and that's Lizzie, isn't it? And Lizzie, yeah. So just Evelyn. Is Catherine with you, Lizzie?
I think she's got her mic turned off.
She's not there. She's gone for a cup of tea. Okay. Just give them. I'll give them another 2 minutes. So that's all right.
Sure, yeah.
Ready, we just couldn't unmute. Ah, there we go.
Hi, Lizzie. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi.
And Catherine, hi. Okay, that's fine. Just Evelyn. Give me 1 more minute, and then I'll start.
What should we have ready?
You will need today a canvas or a piece of paper,
Sure.
a brush,
Mhm.
a little bit of medium, and some colours. The colours I'm using are ultramarine, burnt umber. I'm actually going to use yellow ochre and cadmium red. Okay, I'll explain about the colours in a minute, but you can use the other colours you have. That's not a problem. I'll explain why these ones work well in a minute.
Okay, thank
So I'll be
you.
doing, there's no need to sort of rush to get you stuff. I'll be doing a bit of demonstration first anyway. Okay.
Dave, what was the yellow again?
Yellow ochre.
Yellow,
The
thank you.
mustardy one, yeah.
Would raw sienna do instead?
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely fine, yeah.
Oh, sienna. Oh, I've got me in yellow here. Not here.
If you've just got cad yellow, that's fine. Yellow ochre is often one that, there's Evelyn, hi. Yellow ochre is often one that people have. It's kind of a mustardy colour. It's a pretty standard colour in the palette. Okay, last week we looked at doing those figures. They weren't easy, were they? Okay, there we go. There we go. So it's all about what we were trying to do. Can everyone hear me okay, yeah? Yeah, good, thumbs up, good. What we were trying to do was take a lot of information and simplify it down, trying to extract just the very sort of basics of that information to put into paint, because detail doesn't really work on this scale. Do a portrait? Absolutely, you can get eyes and nose and all sorts of features put into it. But when you're working on this scale, it tends to detract really from the painting. So I've got a couple of paintings I picked out. Let me, actually I need to share screen. You probably can't even see what I'm talking about. Share screen, desktop. Everyone see that screen okay? My desktop, yeah? So they're the figures we were looking at last week. So we did them in black and white, didn't we? Just looking at the silhouette or the profile, and then we added the color onto it. Yeah? So let me show you a couple of paintings, a couple of beautiful, I think they're beautiful paintings. Okay. So this is what we're really trying to get at, is that simplification of form, all that information, simplifying it down so that then you can replicate it and you can put it out and concentrate on color and value, which is what paint is about. Paint loves color, paint loves values, which means light and shade. If we try too hard to put detail in, that tends to dominate, okay? And this is a really good example. Do you see this figure sitting up here? See how beautiful these colors are? Because there's no distractions. We're not trying to search for features in the face. There's a few more features in this one, but this one is totally blanked out, isn't it? But it doesn't look wrong. I don't think it looks wrong. I think what it does is it stops you getting sort of drawn too much to the features, and you end up looking at color and pattern, texture, paintwork, all that other stuff. So I think that's, to me now, that's the sort of crux of painting. That's what we're aiming for. There's another one here, which is quite interesting. So you can see how simplified the face is, isn't it? This isn't easy, simplifying a form like that. Quite difficult to sort of resist putting in all the detail. So you can see the boy's face here. We don't see any detail in it, do we? We don't see the eyes. We don't see the lips. We see a silhouette. What were we doing last week? Another thing, a couple of things I want to point out from this one, and I'm going to come back to this, is this idea of splitting warm and cool, not warm and cool, light and dark. Do you remember we were looking at Steve Browning's little paintings last week with all the figures? I said, look, everywhere he's got dark and light, dark and light, dark and light. So he's splitting it between the two. And it's almost like it gives you the two polarities, you know? So it gives you the very dark, the very light, and you get form from those. That's how we can replicate form in painting, light and dark. And here's the artist done it really, really well. Look, dark, light. We go to the white vest of the boy, dark and light. His trousers, dark and light. Skin, dark and light. Dark and light. All of this is in dark with a few little highlights on the ears. It's everywhere, isn't it? A split of dark and light. Look at the sand, dark and light. Look at the towel, dark and light. Everywhere you look. This is an artist who knows what he's doing. The legs, all dark because they're in shadow. The shoulder dark and light on the back. Yeah. Now, because let me go back to the first one. I won't talk for too long. We'll get on with some stuff. Because these are sort of, very often people don't think about the size. God, it's bucketing down at that. They don't think about the size of their figures in relation to the painting or the picture plane, we call it. So if we were doing these small, what we were doing last week, small little thumbnail figures, 2 inches high, you can't get detail into that. Bring it up sort of 4, 5, 6 inches in scale, and you can get this kind of detail in, what we're seeing on the screen, okay? So we can get a small sense of features. Bring it up that size, and you have to put in more detail, more work. You're working with a fairly sort of blunt instrument. It's a brush that's, sort of a centimeter wide at its biggest. So we can't get those tiny little details. Bring it up to a portrait. Try doing a portrait which is life size as loosely as this. And you either have to get out a house painting brush to do it, okay? Or you have to fill in one big flat area with loads and loads of brush marks, and neither one really works, okay? So it's about matching the size of the subject to the context that it's in, the painting, to the brush, to the character of paint, getting them all to work together, okay? So this painting works because the figure is probably about sort of 4 or 5 inches in size. Let's go back to the other one. This one, imagine it was sort of a mid-sized painting. Those figures are going to be, what, about maybe 8, 9 inches in size. And that works for the way they painted it. If you imagine, look, the brush coming down here, the brush here, brush, brush, brush. So all those brush marks are quite visible there. So if it's done with the sort of number 2 or 3 brush, we're talking about something about, 8 millimeters wide. But look what happens when we go into the distance. Okay, because we have, let me see, because here we have one face with a sense of features, the other one doesn't need to. The weight of the illusion of the painting is carried by 2 elements, okay? It's not just one face. So if you if you blank out that figure lying down on the ground, suddenly that figure sort of sitting up looks a little bit unfinished. Like it almost needs a little more detail in it, okay? But because the other one has the detail, it's carrying the second one. So the weight is kind of divided between two objects. So let's look at this one, and we've got a profile on this boy's face. So we've got some detail we can anchor onto. But look what happens when we go into the distance. These figures then, look what they become. They just become dabs of paint. They don't need to be detailed. And as we go further into the distance, we have faces of people that are literally just 3 blobs of paint. Now, if that was your only painting, it wouldn't look great. But with our eye is focusing on these, and it's almost like when you look at a scene, you don't see it as a photograph to you. You don't look out at a beach and see everything in stark detail. Your eye goes to one person and you read what's happening there. And then everything that's happening in your peripheral vision, all sort of, it's just fuzzy shapes, isn't it? And that's what we want to get across in painting. We don't want a photograph with everything in stark detail. Okay, and this is a perfect example of it. You know, we're focusing on these figures, and the ones in the distance just become abstract shapes, and they're carried by the tighter figure in the foreground. Does that make sense? That frees you up to play with paint, okay, and color, and do what paint loves to do, which is make brush marks. Okay, paint doesn't like to be pushed into tight graphic detail. Okay, it likes to flow, it likes to be put on thick in pastel. Right, enough talking from me. Look at this picture, look at the size of the figures, and if I put this up, you can see, yeah, okay, so if I'm doing a canvas about sort of 12 by 16 inches, that figure would sit quite comfortably, wouldn't it, in there? Yeah. With the figure being maybe around 10 inches high, and we'd get some sense of detail into its features. Yeah, that works. Now, if I go on to this, just like the painting we were looking at, there's three figures really, 2 people and a dog. So they don't have to be quite as precise, do they? We don't see the features of we can't distinguish the features, I should say. Look at the boy there, it's just become a profile edge, okay? And then as we get to something like this, well, you can see we're down to a blob for a face and a line for a body and a bit of highlight. So that's what I'm going to try and do today, okay? I did this with a group yesterday, and we actually went for the more complex one first and then for the easier ones. So we won't do the body today. That's another day's work, okay? I think what I'll do is just go to this one here. Now it's quite a pixelated image. You have all these images. I emailed them out to everybody. Did everybody get them? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one's quite pixelated, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing for reference for painting, because all that detail, that problematic detail, has been ironed out. Okay, those tiny microscopic lines that represent the edges of glasses and things like that, and nostrils, they've all been blanked out to a pixel. So it's actually advantageous to have a pixelated image, okay? So I might start with a couple of these figures that are in silhouette. I'm just going to look at a combination of what we did last week, which was to blank out or black out most of the profile, try and get 2 tones for skin, okay? So I'll do this demonstration, and then I'll give you guys a chance to do it. And we'll do a series of these over the class, all right? We look at certain little clusters and then try and put some sand around them. So if I'm looking at this chap here, see this guy standing up here? Okay. So I could do a drawing first, and it might help you if I do that. So I'm not saying you have to, but I'll do it just to show you exactly what we're looking at. So I'll remove my paint off there. So if I'm looking at that figure, can everybody? No, nobody can see my camera. Sorry. Let me just adjust these screens too. Right. Can everyone see the screen? My page and the photo next to it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at this guy here. See these two guys standing up. This one here has just got his arms resting by his side and he's looking at the other fella there. So first thing I would do is maybe just try and get that armature. So think about the line of the torso, which is fairly straight. The line of the head, which is going at an angle. Maybe a line to represent the shoulders. What's the arm doing? Well, one arm is going out and then in at his side. The other one is coming straight down and also going out. Okay, we've got hips and then we've got legs. The legs seem to bend forward slightly and then back. Forward slightly and then back. Okay, so we've got his gesture there, haven't we? That's so important to try and get that gesture. Between those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, between those 12 lines, you've got every possible sort of combination of posture. And if we don't get that, they usually end up looking like sacks of spuds. Okay, we're like, oh, why doesn't it work? It doesn't look right. Well, get that first, get the skeleton in. So see this guy sitting down here. His is completely different. So it's a figure, but it's completely different. Let's look at what he's doing. Well, his torso is coming up at an angle. Then he's got his shoulders. His arm is coming out and then down, resting on his knee. And then his head is tilted to one side. The other arm is coming down and resting on the other knee. The hips are here. The leg is going up to the knee and then down. And then there's another one that looks like it's underneath him. See the way all those lines have changed? There's not a single one of them in the same position, okay? So each person is totally unique the way they're standing, okay? So let's go back to this guy and I'll just very roughly block out a head. If you're doing this, much easier to do it as sort of geometric shape, sorry, not geometric, a sort of straight angled shapes rather than trying to get a perfect circle, okay? Better off doing it with these jagged lines, so looking at angles. So we've got this sort of almost a square, but going out slightly for his torso, okay? Then we've got arm. And doing these sorts of shapes helps you to get something really strong and solid and confident. Otherwise, we tend to end up with these wishy-washy kind of curves and, you know, it doesn't look like an arm, okay? So try getting those good, strong, solid, straight lines. Out we come with shorts. And sometimes you can just feign confidence in a painting, okay? It doesn't have to be right. If you do it with confidence, it usually looks okay. Now, there we go, slightly off. The shorts need to come up a little bit more. Okay, but that's the idea. Let's look at the chap sitting down now. He's slightly different. So his head is looking out that way to the right. Let's get the angle of his back down into his shorts. T-shirt, sleeve. Hand, can't possibly get his fingers because I don't know what's happening there. He's actually got a really nice posture, this guy. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, so it's worth doing just a very, very quick 2-minute drawing. It's not really about getting a perfect drawing, it's about working out what's happening with the what we call armature, okay, armature. Once I've got that, I can probably go in and try a little bit of painting. So I'll take shots of that and I can email that out to you. So for the painting, I could actually put the armature on in pencil, which might help, or I could do it in paint. So I'm not going to do the whole outline, I'm just going to try and get that sort of armature, that skeleton. Okay, so there he is, seems to be leaning forward a little bit. And next, I'm going to find the brush I've lost. That's typical, isn't it? Here it is. Okay, so I could do, for this guy, I can do a fair bit of it in just black and white. So I'm just going to mix up blue and brown. And I'm going to try and get his t-shirt and shorts. So keeping those brush marks to a minimum. And even now we can see it's starting to sort of fit, isn't it? It looks like he'll fit in there. So while I've got that dark paint, I can actually get his hair as well. And the only other thing I want to do now is find the split for the skin. So I'll just talk through that in a minute, but I'm going to just mix up. I'll talk about the mixing colors in a minute. We're just going to do it quickly. So I've got a color for the dark part of the skin. So it comes, again, that idea of confident line is going to cover a multitude of errors, okay? And this arm's lovely the way it comes out. Face, and then I get the light part of the skin. So thicker paint. So we need plenty of paint on this. Okay, and there he is. Right, it's not perfect. Let's see, it's not perfect at all. His arm needs to go right out. So I'm actually just going to wipe that. Don't be afraid to completely change things if they're wrong. The arm needs to come out there. And the light coming in. And I pushed his t-shirt out a little bit, okay? Here we are, he's done. The only other thing I'm going to do now is put a bit of background around him. So when I'm doing background, I can fix the shape. So you get a second chance at the shape. So again, I'm trying to do it in a series of straight lines. Looking again at the drawing. And now I can get his features. Okay, there he is, feeling a little bit hunched. But he still looks, I think he still looks convincing enough as a figure. Okay, there he is. Okay, so you can write this down if you want. Process. I'll do the guy sitting down now. Process, no, actually I'll do another one of him. So process is armature. So line between the shoulders. line angle of the head. Torso, line between the two hip bones. From one shoulder, out for the arm, down for the lower arm, upper arm, lower arm. Leg, lower leg, upper leg, lower leg. Okay? Armature first of all. Second thing, I'm going to get the whole mass of his t-shirt and shorts. I'm just leaving out the arm. Down for his shorts. And second leg of the shorts. Okay. So you can see the shape starting to come out now, can't you? Let's get the line of his hair. Okay, everyone followed that so far? And then I need 2 colors for the flesh. We did them last week, didn't we? The 2 colors for the flesh. No, we didn't? Okay, let's do it this week then. Right, let me go over to my palette. So 2 colors for flesh. If you've got yellow ochre and cadmium red, they're great, okay? Yellow ochre and alizarin crimson will do the same. If you don't, you can use your cad yellow, okay? The light part of the skin, people often recognize the pink in it, but they don't recognize the yellow in it, all right? So light part of the skin, bit of white, tiny bit of red brings you to pink, tiny bit of yellow ochre warms it to kind of a sort of orangey peach color, okay? And there's your light skin color. So it's white, a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow. It's basically a very light orange. So back we come to this guy. Let's pop it in. And remember, there's one of them, so all our attention has to be fixed on him. There's nowhere else. There's nothing else in there to carry the weight of that painting. So if I added in another half dozen figures, it really wouldn't matter if this guy was perfectly painted or not. Okay, so there's the light parts. Then for the shadow parts, it's more of a sort of purpley color. So what you want to do is take a bit of red, a little bit of blue. Okay, and that would probably just give you the right color, kind of a purpley red. Okay, let's test it. There you go. That's okay. Recognizing that color is very difficult for a lot of people because they just see skin. They just think pink, pink, light pink everywhere. Okay, so let's go back to the image. Black for everything, light pink, shadow color of the flesh. That shadow color of the flesh is not pink, okay? Now, it wouldn't matter if that was pushed slightly more towards the blue. That doesn't matter, does it? Okay, and there he is again. And all I did the last stage was cut in around that object by using a kind of sand color. which is literally just white with a blob of yellow ochre into it. That's all. Make a yellow. Bit of medium. And we can cut in, keep your paint really thick, and you can cut in around that. That's basically all I want to do today. Just do it a lot of times. And add in some more figures. Okay, so you can see that figure jumping out, can't you, once you do that? Okay. So, can I give you guys a bit of time to try that?
So
Any
Dave,
questions?
excuse me,
Any questions?
yeah, approximately, is he about 6 inches then?
2, 4, 6, about just slightly less. I'd say 4 or 5. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, a little less. That's 6 inches. The whole canvas is 6. So I'd say about 4. About 4 would be perfect. If you go to 6, that means that you're filling in an awful lot of space, you know? So, yeah. About the size of
And Dave,
yeah.
what number brush are you using?
Number 2. I use number 2 for everything when I'm
Okay.
painting on this type of canvas.
Okay,
And I'd recommend that just stick to a set of materials. 90% of what we're going to be doing is 6x8 panels, a number 2 brush, and just 3 paints and a brown. So yellow, red, blue, and a brown. We might change the yellow and the red sometimes slightly, but you could still do it with the cadmium and the alizarin. Okay, shouldn't make much of a difference. Is that right? So I put that there. Oh, excuse me. You have the image. I can leave it up on screen as well. A little bit. There you go. Okay. I don't want to go any bigger because it'll just get really pixelated on you. So you can see I haven't replicated it exactly, but I think if I had 4 or 5 of these figures in a composition, I think they'd look okay. There we go. You can see now that looks like skin, doesn't it? Even though it's not skin colored at all. Okay. So I'm going to leave you. Let me give you. How does 20 minutes sound for that? All right. Let's give it 20 minutes then, and then we'll try expanding that. So all we're going to be doing later on is just expanding that out, adding a few more figures in, and looking at the really loose little details in the background. And as always, just if you want to send me in any photos as you go, I can check. Okay, my WhatsApp is still the same.
Dave, what color was the dark skin again? What colors did you mix?
I think it was red and blue. It was like a purple.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I think more red than blue though.
Okay, thanks.
I've just done that, Mary, but it comes out too red for me, unlike Dave's color.
Yeah.
Dave, are you there?
It's on.
Sorry, I was on, sorry, I was talking away. I was on mute. Sorry about that.
Ah,
Of course, yeah, I was here. So if you don't, do you have a cadmium red, Mary?
Not here.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you've a alizarin crimson. I'll show you what to do. Here's alizarin crimson, right?
Yeah,
Add a bit of ultramarine, and that pulls it down to purple.
yeah,
But it's darker, isn't it? It's too dark.
yeah, yeah.
So let's just lift
Okay.
it up with a little bit of white.
okay.
Okay.
Add a bit of white.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And let's use let's do our color theory now. If it's too intense, the purple, what do we do?
Brighten it.
No. If it's too intense a color,
Oh.
too saturated,
Add a bit of brown,
you can add a bit of brown.
yellow.
Oh, yellow, exactly. You go to the opposite of the color wheel. Color wheel has 3 colors, red, blue, do the opposite. So you could add a little bit of brown, yeah, absolutely. Brown tends to darken it as well. So it's all about finding that color. See, it's almost the same now. Finding that color, understanding about saturation and tint. So find your color. If it's too much, tone it down a bit. Rita was right, or whoever said it, brown is perfectly acceptable. And if it's too dark, add a bit of white. When you can sort of navigate your way through colors like that, there you go, exactly the same color now. It really helps you, okay? We've done some of this. Maybe we'll just keep doing some of this color theory each week. Yeah, so you can get it with the alizarin crimson. Look, it's almost the exact same color. It's just a bit more straightforward, wasn't it?
Mm.
With the cad red, I just put cad red in. With the alizarin, had to fiddle around a bit, put some brown, put some white in. Is everyone okay on mixing colors there? Does anybody need some help?
Okay, so far, thanks.
Don't be afraid to ask, okay?
No, okay.
3 basic colors: a black, shadow skin, and highlight skin.
Yeah, I'm using the ultramarine and burnt umber to make the black, and it's very close to the purple.
Yeah, it would be the purple of the
Yeah.
skin. That
I
means the
don't have a
purple,
black.
the purple of your skin is too dark then. That's what that means.
Okay,
So lift the purple of the skin a little bit. Excuse me. Well, we've actually gone past 20 minutes there, but I'll give you another 5, okay? And at 10 past, I'll just move on a little bit. As I said, nothing radically different what I'm doing for the rest of the class, just consolidating that idea.
Dave,
Yeah,
when trying to figure out the angle of the shoulders, hips, arms,
yeah.
head, how do we figure out the tilt?
Of what?
The head, the shoulders,
You use your
Sir.
pencil.
just line up your pencil against
Line up
the,
your pencil with it and just look
Okay.
for that slight tilt. Yeah, that's the best way. And especially things like between the shoulders, you have to imagine it because you can't
Yeah.
really see. Imagine where that ball joint is for the shoulder.
yeah,
Just
Yeah.
get a mental angle. The Italians had a word for, classical, a really popular classical pose in drawing is contrapposto, which means counter posture. So you'll find the shoulders sort of drop one way and the hips drop another way. And it makes
Okay.
a really pleasing kind of posture. Okay.
and in drawing, are the shoulders more or less the same width as the hips?
Yeah, I think more or less.
Yeah.
More or less, slightly wider, I would guess at.
Okay,
But possibly not. More or less, yeah. Oh, Rita, I just saw your drawings there as well from last week. They're you've done a lot of them. Well done. They some of them are excellent, especially some of the guys sitting down. The top ones, they work well. And the two figures on the beach. Or actually, they're the ones they're the ones from the paintings I sent out, aren't they? The ones we were looking at earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, Ruth.
Yeah,
In general, the painting work is actually really good. You just got, I think the one that really stands out, I mean, the arms and the head looks okay. The leg, the right leg is very skinny, isn't it?
yeah,
So that one, you see the way it sort of comes up and then it sort of skirts around the hip, okay? So
yeah, yeah,
try and get that a little bit wider. So legs in general will go like this.
Wider.
So yeah, so you'll find with the leg, generally speaking, you'll have this sort of shape. You'll have a sort of wider hip, and then you'll have the bottom part, and often you'll have the calf cutting out and then in. Okay, so the calf
yes.
muscles here and the hip muscles are here. all right?
okay.
In terms of shape, that's really what you're looking for. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Right, I think it's time for me to move on. So, what I'm going to do is, let's see, yeah, it's 1:15. Yeah, we've been an hour on that. I'm just going to, for about 15 minutes, carry on putting some of the other figures in, exactly the same process. If you want to watch, it's fine. If you want to paint, that's okay too. So, I'm going to mix up my blue and brown again. A little bit of medium. I'm going to try and find that second figure. So I'm looking for the gap between them. It doesn't have to be exact. Somewhere around here, we've got his back, which is fairly straight. Head's at a slight angle. Definitely he's got rounded shoulders. One arm coming out and then in. And you can check the angles with your brush. Out and in. Hips. Hips actually are a slight opposite angle, aren't they? So that's straight, but the hips are sort of sunk slightly. It's resting on one leg. One leg comes down, then there's the other. And they disappear into the next guy's head. Okay, so I'm going to block in the dark masses now. We have got slightly different on this one, isn't it? We've got a dark sleeve. And then we have the dark left edge of the shirt. Now, all the time I'm going to be talking about dark and light as I do this. So dark, right? And then I'm going to put some white into that gray to make not a black but a dark grey. Yeah, that's okay. And then the relative light. So 2 values. Two values, okay? Now I'm going to come down and get his shorts. So I'll get the dark of his shorts. And then the light of his shorts. Okay, let's do the same thing we did before. Pop the hair in. And then the darker flesh color. It's the darker flesh color here. So as with the legs, the arms are thinner at the elbow, thicker as they come up towards the shoulder. Then another sort of wedge shape coming down, slightly thicker, going to thin. Then dark on this side for skin, dark skin here, and dark skin side of the head. Then we switch and get light skin. White, red, bit of yellow. There we go. Second boy. We've also got a girl, it looks like, standing behind there. So her hair is, what do we see? We see her head. Pretty much all we see of her. A little bit of an arm coming out here. So get the dark in. A little bit of dark skin. And then light skin. And she has sort of a beige t-shirt. That's her done. Let's go through to the kind of windbreak they're carrying. So let's look at armature for that. So one line coming across, and another line there. So they seem to be rolling it up together, don't they? Okay. So let's go dark blue. Dark blue, dark blue, dark blue, and dark blue. And then let's do light blue, light blue, light blue, and light blue. Next, I'm going to do dark red. How do I make a dark red?
Add a bit of blue.
Yeah, a bit of blue or a bit of brown. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Dark red and then light red. Dark yellow. How to make a dark yellow?
Yellow and brown.
Yeah, or you could use yellow and purple. Do the same thing. So there we have dark yellow. Are you getting bored of this yet? Dark yellow and light yellow. Okay, it works, doesn't it? Dark light all the time. Okay. I'm going to come down. Actually, I might just go up to the background now. Add a bit of the distant figures in and then try and pull the the sand color all around it. So I'm just going to push to one side. See that cluster of figures just to the right of this guy, and get some of that in. So get my blue. So this is just like, you see these figures in the water here on this painting. Look what happens when they go off into the distance. It only needs to be sort of 1 or 2 blobs of paint, okay, dark and light. But absolutely put those little brushes away for this, okay? So let's try and do, or I'm going to try and do this in the same technique, with the same technique. So dark paint, so blue and brown. Let's see what we've got. We've got, coming out about here, I've got lady's top and a bit of hair. Got hair and another figure behind her, and there. Okay, let's find shadow color for the skin. And highlight color for the skin. Really thick and pastel paint now on this one. Okay, and what else do we have in there? We have a few blues, kind of purpley blues, lilacs. Seem to have a nice lilac there. So I don't need to cover up every bit of that canvas. Okay, that tinted background is going to work really well to help me get that sense of these dotted, fractured little glints of color without having to overload the surface with paint. A bit of darker pink in there, okay? So next I'm just going to come on with my sand color, and I'm going to try and cut that whole thing in. Loads of paint, decent bit of medium, and there they are, cluster of figures sitting in the sand. Okay, now it doesn't mean, in a different context, it means nothing, does it? But in the context of this, because you've got a figure in the foreground, it makes sense. I could try and cut in, sort out some of these shapes that are a bit dodgy. Now I'm going to go over something we did a few weeks ago, which is how to fill in and cut in an area. People will often start on the outside and work their way in because they're afraid of making a mess of the edge. Okay, what happens is, if you do that, you will start with lots of paint on your brush. So you've got a really nice saturated mark here. As you work in, all the paint goes off your brush and you end up scrubbing away at the edge and have a really wishy-washy edge, okay? It doesn't work. You want your strongest statement up against the object and then your wishy-washy mark going off, okay? So let's move these guys across. And I'm going to do some cutting in here. So, because I'm on a tinted background, I don't need to fill in every millimeter of that canvas. Can you see that? Zoom up there a little bit. Okay, so look how much of that canvas I can leave blank. I don't need to get into those microscopic marks, okay? And to get his features, come down, just pop a nose in there. But so important to keep that paint, the strong saturated paint, up against the edge of your object. Okay, and there you have it. Some figures on the beach, okay? If you want, we could go back in and maybe refine it a little bit. I'd be happy to leave it as it is. You could start looking at maybe just pulling in a little more detail on some of that, you know. We could sort of maybe sort out a few little variations, but it's not essential. Okay, any questions? No? Deafening silence. Don't know if that's good or bad.
It's good, but I think maybe it's a lot to take in.
Okay. Which bit specifically?
For me, I love the armature
Yeah.
of the second guy.
Uh-huh.
And then I kind of found it hard when you were distinguishing his body, you know, from his arm parts, where you're just painting some and not the other. Just takes a while, you know, to get used to.
Sorry, just say that again to me.
When you were painting his t-shirt body
Yeah.
and leaving the arm parts blank, you know.
Oh, here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but it just takes a while to get used to that. And
Yeah.
my inclination would be to stop, put the arms back in, and then go down to the shorts.
but sure, what's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I liked what you did.
But- Yeah, no, you can do that. Yeah, I get that that's probably a bit more difficult. That probably isn't, because you can sort of see it's just maybe one line for the arm. What you could do is you could do what we did last week, which is to you could probably blank the whole thing out in black and then add your colors up on top of it. You know, that's possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the idea of light and dark is absolutely
beautiful. Yeah.
essential. You know, light, dark,
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Again,
And
the other thing I would find difficult is, you know, for example, when you came to the fellow's face on the right-hand side and you said, oh, let's just refine his face a bit.
Yeah.
It's just having the technique to be able to
Yeah.
go in with your background color,
Yeah.
create a mouth, you know,
Yeah.
for example.
But the reason I left that to the end was I didn't think that was important. Not as important as what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a sense of the figure. So I would have been just as happy to leave it blank myself,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But I know some people aren't. They like
Yeah.
a little more definition. What I'm saying is leave it till the end if you want to go in and start sort of playing around with stuff, polishing it up, you know.
Mm.
Okay, but I'd be happy to leave that as it is.
It's on mute.
And as with everything, it's practice. So just look
David,
at, yeah,
It's Catherine here. Unfortunately, the first figure I put on the left-hand side of my bit of an old canvas that I was doing.
yeah,
So can I just have them turned away?
absolutely. Now, if I was doing painting like
Ignoring the
this,
two wrapping up the umbrella, you know.
if I was doing a painting like this, I'd often just do it as a kind of a composite of these
Yeah.
little clusters. So it wouldn't matter if I put these the other side, if I put those figures there.
Yeah.
It's just
And
about fitting a little cluster of figures around another one, you know?
I can have the umbrella going behind, the end of the umbrella going behind him
Yeah.
if necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you see that girl running along the beach there behind them? If we were to do that, I would look at
She's very white. The little one, is it?
Yeah, you can only just see her. So you might just think about a leg. So all you want to do is create a little glimmer of something going on, okay?
Yeah.
Little bit of the clothes, the white of the shirt, and maybe the dark of the head. And that's enough.
It is. Oh my
Yes.
God.
It doesn't need any more,
That's
okay?
great. That
It's
is
all
great.
illusion. It's all illusion, okay? So try things like that. You know, this figure is certainly more complex. So that took me a lot more time. But then when I go to these, they don't need to be, they don't need to have a lot of work in them. They don't need to be overstated because this is carrying the scene, the painting, okay? Figures aren't easy, are they? That's why I often discourage people from doing them. They're really, really, really difficult. So a lot of the work is eliminating detail as well.
Okay.
So there's heaps of figures in that scene there. So just, let's see, we've got about 45 minutes left. So I would suggest just taking a little cluster of figures and trying to replicate it. Most complex is probably this guy in the foreground here, the one looking out. But if you've got him fairly well done, the others can just be much less distinct, you know, like that girl in the distance there. So I might just carry on popping a few more figures in.
Dave,
Yeah.
how many, you were saying, measure, how many heads is in the torso?
Oh, it depends on it depends on the figure.
Or does it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you might find usually sort of six-ish, I would say. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I would say 6, where the head is one of them. So head,
Okay,
and then 2 heads down to the torso, and probably around 3 then for the legs.
okay.
But each person would be slightly different. So what I say is all painting is a process of simplifying, trying to reduce all that information you get, simplifying it down to something, I suppose, its simplest form. So taking all those variations in skin tones, all those variations in value, and trying to split them down into two, light and shade. Okay, come on, folks, send me some photos. Come on.
We're very slow.
Actually, do you know what I might do just for a couple of minutes is go and look over some of Pete Brown's paintings. He does a lot of street painting. If you just bear with me while I take that image off the screen for a minute. It can be really good to copy other people's paintings as well. So Pete Brown, his name is Pete the Street. He paints outside all the time. Let's see. Let's find street scenes. There it goes. If you sort of look at how other people paint them, sometimes it can be very useful. Just pull that onto desktop. Okay, let's have a look at that. Okay. So it looks like Dublin actually, doesn't it? It is Dublin. Oh, there you go. Abbey Street.
Abbey Street, yeah.
Okay, he's an English artist, lives in Bath. So he's painted the whole scene in a very similar technique, isn't it? Very loose, sort of these flourish, gestural brush strokes. So look at this fella in the foreground. He's probably the one with the most detail in him. And look, there's barely anything in there, is there? Look, we've got an outline for a hat. One, it's dull day, so there isn't a big split of light and shade. Look, just getting the overall shape right. And what carries it is this confident brushwork. There's a lot to be said for just sitting there for an hour, playing around with the brush and not worrying about what comes out. Because we've got one figure in the foreground that's a little heavier than the others. Look at these in the distance. Let's go up. It's a great photo, actually. Look at this one. So it's what we were looking at last week. A silhouette, pretty much. Okay. The legs white at the top and the bottom. The torso and a dot for the head. Look the way he's just put a line in for the legs. Okay. And that one even there, they're pretty bogey, aren't they? I mean, they're not great as figures go, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't detract. They look okay in the context of the bigger composition.
And yet they've got great movement in them.
Yeah, they do. Here's a beautiful one. This guy carrying his cello here. So again, just the light, shade, few dots. And then over here, we've got a figure looks like he's running. So just 2 lines of paint. We can see his satchel by 1 line and 1 blob. And this one over here. Now that wouldn't make a great bit of painting on its own, this. But in the context of the bigger composition, looks absolutely fine, doesn't it? Okay. So I suspect some of you might be over painting and overthinking these. Just my best advice would be make mistakes. Paint quickly and make mistakes. And don't worry about them. No? Okay, Evelyn, I'm just looking at your figures from last week. Are you there?
Yes, Dave,
Oh, hi. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the figures from last week. So the technique is exactly what I have. That's fine. So you've blocked it out in dark and then added some color on top. So some of them work and some of them don't, and that's fine.
Some of them are awful, yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay. Why is that a bad thing? They can't all be perfect all the time. Like I was saying, make mistakes. Some of these are okay, some aren't. I did two figures to start with. One of them was terrible. This one isn't even great. Okay, this is probably better. So if I'm looking at the list you sent me, the first one seems to have quite a nice gesture. He looks like he's sitting down. Second one is excellent.
Yeah.
The hand resting back. So you've got the gesture. So if that was in Pete Brown's painting, maybe not the one in the foreground, but in the middle ground, it wouldn't look out of place. It would look fine. As we go along then, next two are okay. The third one is a bit dodgy. As we come down, the last one probably works the best of them. So elements of them will work. You might find the legs are okay and the head is slightly wonky, you know. And that's okay, you know. It's about to get it. Very often, you know, we look at a painting, we say, "Oh God, that's terrible," and really, there's one part of it that isn't great. You know?
What I find hardest to do is anything coming towards me. So say the first person, his foot was coming towards me. I know you mentioned when you were doing, you know, your shapes, your armature, you know, you were doing a little kind of triangle or something to bring it forward. But I really, really find that very tough.
Well, you're not alone. It's called foreshortening, and most artists would agree with you. So you're not alone there. Okay, it is difficult. It's because we think differently to how we see. So when something's coming towards us, we think we should see all of it. We almost think like, you know, Egyptian hieroglyphs. They didn't do foreshortening, you know, everything was there in profile. But when we see a leg coming towards us, we might not see any of the thigh. So you've got, let's say there's somebody and their shorts like this. So they're running. So you'll see one leg, the whole of it, and then the next one, you might just see that.
All right.
Because you don't see any of the top part of the leg is going away from you, and you just see the line coming down, and there's the shoe. Okay? You don't see the side of the foot. Because it's all turned away from you. And you're not alone. Most artists would say when they do life drawing, most artists will complain if they've got a view with severe foreshortening. They're like, no, don't give me that.
All right.
It's tricky. It's really, really difficult, you know. It's about observation and trying to, that process that you go through all the time with drawing, you're trying to switch off what you think you're seeing in your mind and look at actually what you are seeing. So lifetimes work. So it's not something that just clicks into place and suddenly we can do it.
No.
It occupies most artists for their entire lives and trying to figure this stuff out, you know.
I keep trying to do, you know, what you're saying in terms of not thinking of it as a foot, but just thinking of it as something, a shape. But, Thank you.
Okay. So in a way, painting is both complex and simple. So it's you know, there are complex shapes, but it's about simplifying it, and simplifying it is can be a difficult process. But I suppose most artists enjoy that sort of that working out, trying to figure things out. Excuse me. So, just let me move this 1 second to the photo. They look pretty good, Catherine. So the person standing up has got a really good posture on him.
Yeah.
The one then, the two rolling up the umbrella. The man, his head is slightly sort of
Too far up.
banana shaped. So just, and it's only going to need to be a blob of paint. So just draw it out here. You will find it much easier in future to, if you're painting on a tinted background rather than a white one.
I know, yeah.
Okay, so the guy he's kind of like this. You have his head sort of coming out like that, right? Whereas his head comes more up like that. Okay, it's tucked in under his shoulders. Okay.
Yeah.
And you could sort that out by cutting in the outside. You
Yeah,
know,
I couldn't-
you always get a second chance when you're cutting
I
in.
couldn't figure out whether he was bald or whether he had hair. I couldn't really figure it
I
out.
think he does have a bit of hair. It might be sunglasses up on top of his head.
Oh.
There's something
Mm.
up there.
Or is he turning around sideways, or is that just?
He's slightly to the side. He looks like he's got kind of shaved on the back, and
Yeah.
maybe just a bit of hair on top.
I think he
It
has a
looks like
crew
to
cut,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, the head. Yeah, so I just cut off the head almost level with the lady's head.
Yeah, with the background. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
No, they're pretty good.
Thank you.
And you're getting the technique of, I mean, the drawing's fairly good, and they're all sort of, they're occupying that space convincingly
Yeah.
because they're the
I-
right size.
I love the idea of the dark and the skin color. I love the way that works out.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's great, actually. It's
It's,
lovely.
follow that process through everything you paint,
Yeah.
and it'll make everything a lot easier.
Great, thank you.
So shift
Oh,
from.
sorry, what about the guy leaning over his right leg?
Oh, the
What?
guy sort of crouched down.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a go at him. He's difficult. He's probably more difficult, but if you can get that, it's a much more interesting set of shapes to make a painting with.
Yeah.
So if that was to become a painting, he would be really interesting the armature on him is very interesting, the way everything's crossing over, whereas these guys are all sort of standing straight up, you know?
No, but the guy's left leg that's folding up the umbrella.
Oh, oh yes, so
Right leg.
it's not there. Yeah, sorry. So see what you mean. So the leg that's, you're asking about the leg that you painted.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
left
yeah.
one. Yeah, it looks okay.
So yeah,
I think
Yeah.
the shorts need to be, I think if you cut in the background, so where you've got some kind of, look, where you've got some sort of woolly edges like I have there, if
Yeah.
you come in then with the brush,
yeah,
which I've lost again, if you come in with the brush and just cut that in,
yeah.
lots of fluid paint,
And his other leg,
it makes for a sharp shape. On his other leg, we don't see it.
you just can't see it.
Yeah, we can't see it. There's a guy's face in the way. So you could pop the guy's face in if you wanted. You know?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah,
So we
yeah.
could draw a little bit of him in with his glasses
yeah.
if we wanted to. It actually makes a nice element because it's creating an overlap, isn't it? He's in the foreground, then the other one's behind him. So it gives you a more convincing sense of
Okay, yeah.
depth. there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. There you go. Those images just come out to everybody. So my painting and the drawings I did. Okay. Yeah, Ruth, they look good as well. I don't know, but I imagine people think that they should look a lot more finished than, or they expect them to look a lot more finished than they should, than they need to be, you know? So when I showed you that Pete Brown painting, I hope everybody sort of realized, oh, right, okay, they don't have to be so perfect at all. So that looks pretty good, Ruth. The light and the shade on the umbrella is really good. The painting process is good. I think you just need to sharpen up a little bit more on the drawing. Okay, so things like if a leg, just making sure that that leg is the right width. Sometimes I'll give people a little tip. So sometimes it's about, say if I was doing this leg here, it's about thinking as you're doing it, rather than just throwing the brush down and hoping for the best. Lay the brush on and think about the shape as you paint. So it's wider at the top. So as I come down, I'm going to lift the brush up a little bit, then return, and then turning that brush to make it thinner. Okay, so much more slow, methodical, measured, considered brush marks. Okay, and so while you've got your brush resting there, you can look at both sides of the shape. Otherwise, there's a tendency sometimes just, oh, there's one bit of a leg, there's another bit. And we sort of hope for the best then and the rest. But if you just slow right down and look at what you're doing, sort of step back and look at the overall effect as well. And the brush can sit there for 10 minutes. You know, it doesn't need to do anything. And then just much more considered brush marks, looking at the overall shape. So that brush will do everything from, I'm running out of medium here, it'll do everything from a thin line to really, really thick line. So we can get the whole leg, if we wanted, in one brush mark. And that's what the Pete Brown paintings, that's what he has. He has confident brushwork, you know, and that just comes from, to be honest, that comes from making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, okay.
Making a lot of mistakes and not really worrying too much about them. Okay.
Okay. Hi, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. I'll be in touch.
And are you in Italy at the moment?
No, I haven't.
No.
I'm here today, but I'm heading off. Going to the airport to drop my bag ahead of time. We're going off sometime in the middle of the night.
Very nice.
So I don't, with the hassle, I don't want to. I'm going to drop the bag
no
over
problem.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Holidays.
And hopefully I'll be able to zoom in. I'm not 100% sure, but I
Okay.
hopefully. Okay,
Have a
bye-bye.
great time.
Be in touch.
Bye, Ruth.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Hi, Lizzie.
I'm thinking too much about this today. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things you need to do is use more paint.
Yeah.
So I can see when I'm looking right up at that canvas, let me get my brush. Let me zoom up a little bit. Okay.
I think I'm using a very sketchy canvas as well. So I'm like,
Right, it might not be
And it
sticking very
just-
well. So
no.
what I'm seeing is sort of these sort of quite sort of scrubbed brush marks with some
Yeah.
very sort of soft edges, that kind of technique. Whereas if we get, I've run out of medium here, but if you've got plenty of paint and medium on your brush, you'll get paint like that. And that's what's happening. So the edges aren't sharp because there's not enough paint on there. The shape looks absolutely fine to me. So the drawing and everything, I think it's only that. It's just using more paint and a bit of medium. So
Perfect.
you
Yeah,
know,
I'm using loads of medium and loads of paint, but as I said, I think I'm just
you
playing.
know, it could be the canvas. Sometimes they're very absorbent. They
Yeah.
can just sort of suck all the oil out of the paint, you know.
What can you do about that? Like, is it good to kind of treat them or?
Yeah, you can just, if you cover it with acrylic.
Yeah.
Basically, you're not painting on the canvas surface anymore. You're painting on acrylic. It forms a kind of waterproof layer, plastic layer over the canvas, you know. So
Yeah, I think I'll do that.
that's-
It's just an old, like it's an old
Yeah.
canvas sketch pad. Like I'm not doing.
right.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good idea to use that acrylic, because any surface you paint on, if you cover it with a little layer of acrylic, you're always painting onto an acrylic surface,
Yeah.
basically, not what's underneath, you know. So they tends to sort of even out all the different.
And then that won't kind of absorb all the paint and do all that.
No, it shouldn't, because acrylic is plastic when it dries. So
Yeah.
yeah, nothing really goes through it. So yeah, I think that's mainly what I could see in yours. Just the paint is a little bit
Sketchy.
sort of scratchy. So more paint, more medium,
Brilliant.
go down,
Thank you.
right? I think you might not want to hear this, but I think next week we should do some more of this. Okay, because it's, you know, it's just practice, practice, practice. So I'll find some other little images which are similar. So these little clusters of figures. Okay, maybe we'll try and do 2 of them next week. So have a couple of canvases or a prepared oil paper, something like that, something to paint on. Have your paints. Make sure you have some medium as well, and we'll dive straight in next week. Okay. So look, I'm going to sign off now.
Oh,
If you didn't manage to get any photos sent through, send them through later on, and I'll make sure I have a look at them. Okay, and I'll get back to you straight away.
yeah, I don't have my phone with me at the moment.
Yeah, that's fine. So send them through. I will look at them. And see you next week. Okay.
Okay, Jane, thanks.
Bye, folks.
Brilliant.
Bye, everyone.
See you
Bye.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
I'm just gonna go now.
And they won't go, will they?
Yeah, there.
Can we not keep them? No.
Have a good day.